Hey everyone, before we dive into this gripping story, please hit that subscribe button to support my channel and stay updated with more captivating tales like this one. The instant I stepped into the courtroom, my mother stifled a chuckle, her breath sharp and biting, as if she'd been anticipating this moment forever. My father, meanwhile, gave a slow shake of his head, his face already clouded with the shame of claiming me as his daughter. Anastasia Crowell. That name once carried whispers of failure, a stain on their legacy. I used to let their words suffocate me, burying me beneath their scorn. But today, they discover who their overlooked daughter had truly become. The courtroom carried the sterile scent of polished stone and crisp documents, its air heavy with judgment. My heels clicked against the floor, a steady cadence that belied the storm raging in my chest. On the front row, my mother pressed her lips tight, but a thin, cruel laugh escaped. My father let out a slow, disappointed sigh, as if my presence alone was an embarrassment he'd already resigned himself to. The judge paused, gavel hovering, his eyes widening briefly before he leaned toward the clerk. I caught his hushed words. "My God, is that her?" The murmur rippled through the room like electricity. Heads swiveled, voices fell silent, and the only sound was the hum in my heart. I kept moving forward, each step deliberate, resonating off the walls. The folder in my hand weighed more than it should. 7 years of silence bound in paper. I glanced at my parents just long enough to see a flicker of doubt behind their smug facades. They thought they'd already triumphed. At the table, I set the folder down with care, its soft thud piercing the stillness. My mother shifted, her smile wavering. My father stared forward, unyielding. The judge remained silent. They assumed I was there to defend myself, blind to the fact that they were the ones under scrutiny. Light gleamed off the desk's metal edge, catching the papers I'd spent years preparing. I let the silence linger, heavy and sharp, before raising my chin, voice steady. "Let's begin," I said. My mother's laughter died. From the outside, we were the picture of perfection, America's shining example of success. Raymond Crowell, my father, the silver-tongued titan of one of Oregon's largest real estate dynasties. Vivian, his poised wife, celebrated at charity galas, her elegance captured in every photograph. And Elliot, their flawless son, the heir who could do no wrong. But behind that polished exterior, the truth had fractures no one dared acknowledge. I once stood by their side, managing the company when my father's health wavered. Every account was balanced, every report pristine. I believed discipline and honesty could preserve a legacy rooted in pride. They called it detachment. In 2014, when the housing market collapsed, I poured nearly $400,000 of my own money into keeping Crowell Estates afloat, ensuring employees received their paychecks. I thought saving the company meant saving our family. I was mistaken. 3 months later, when profits stabilized, my role was terminated. The stated reason? Financial misconduct. The real reason? I'd become a liability. That night at dinner, the chandelier glowed like a spotlight on my disgrace. My mother cut her steak with precision, her voice soft but venomous. "You were meant to nurture, not lead." I gave a quiet laugh, knowing anger would only validate her. That was when I felt my blood turned to ice. I left with nothing but a file of financial records and a vow that one day they'd answer for the deception they'd woven. They thought I'd disappeared, but I was merely biding my time, waiting for them to seal their own fate. 5 years later, in my modest apartment overlooking the Pearl District, a plain brown package sat by my door. No sender, no return address, just my name scrawled across it. Inside was an envelope, sealed with brittle wax, the handwriting unmistakably my grandfather's, for her eyes only, G. Crowell. My hands shook as I unfolded the papers. Each page bore his signature, each line declaring every asset, property, and share left to me. Not Elliot, me. For a moment, I was frozen. When my grandfather died, the will read in court named my brother as the sole heir. I'd believed it, grieving the loss of his trust more than his passing. But this was the truth they'd concealed. My phone rang, jarring me. "Is this Anastasia Crowell?" a gruff voice asked. "Caleb Finch. I worked with your grandfather's lawyer." My words caught. He vanished, Caleb said. 15 years ago, after refusing to alter your grandfather's will. He thought the old man hid the real one somewhere, trusting you to find it. My pulse thundered, the world tilting. This wasn't just betrayal, it was a conspiracy. I slid the will back into its envelope, writing in steady ink. Patience is strength. For the first time, I saw clearly. The Crowells hadn't just robbed me. They'd committed a crime, and I was done ignoring it. Caleb and I met at a quiet cafe along the Willamette River, where conversations faded quickly and secrets could be shared unnoticed. He slid a scratched USB drive across the table. From the archive boxes at Gerald and Pine, he said. Found it in a stack meant for shredding. When I plugged it in, static crackled, followed by an old man's frail voice. Raymond and Vivian Crowell forced me to alter the air. I was scared, but I kept the original for Anastasia. The cafe's noise dissolved. The lawyer had known I'd return. The truth had been waiting. Caleb turned his laptop toward me, showing a scanned will. The signature looks authentic, he said. It is, I replied. They lifted my grandfather's signature from a 1997 document, pasted onto a forged will. I studied the familiar, trembling ink. They hadn't faked his name. They'd exploited his honesty. Anger surged, then settled into resolve. You can mimic a signature, I thought, but not honor. At home, I rummaged through an old cabinet, finding 1990s bank statements. One line stood out, account holder, Gerald Crowell and Anastasia Crowell. But the bank's digital records showed my name erased. Someone with influence did that, Caleb muttered. I saved screenshots to an encrypted drive and met his gaze. What's next, he asked. Now, I said, we do this cleanly. No chaos, no vengeance, just truth, sharp and clear. My coffee sat cold as we left. 3 weeks later, Caleb and I drove to Salem. The nursing home smelled of rain-soaked wood. Mrs. Henley, my grandfather's former housekeeper, sat bundled in a blanket, her hands shaky, but her eyes piercing. I showed her a faded photo she'd sent me years ago. Her voice quavered but held firm. Mr. Gerald signed the will in his study. I was there, took the picture. Your mother stood behind him. She pulled a worn album from a drawer, flipping to a photo. My grandfather, pen in hand, the lawyer beside him, and my mother, Vivian, staring into the lens. My breath stopped. Would you testify if needed? I asked. If the court calls, she said softly. But they destroyed every original. This is all I have. On the drive back, the sky turned iron gray. Caleb whispered, if she still has that photo, they'll target her. He was right. That night, my apartment was ransacked, drawers upended, computer shattered. But on my desk lay a single sheet. Legacy isn't handed down, it's forged. The handwriting was my grandfather's, his old mantra for when I doubted myself. Maybe it wasn't a threat, but a reminder of what I was fighting for. Exhaustion weighed on me, but resolve grew stronger. They thought silence meant fragility. They didn't realize silence is strategy, and my moment was near. Elliot's message arrived late, proposing a final family meeting at the Crater Lake house, where my grandfather once taught me to row. I knew it wasn't reconciliation, it was control. The house glowed under candlelight, my mother regal in pearls, my father sharp in his suit, Elliot sipping wine with feigned ease. Still think you're above us, Anna, he sneered. I stayed silent, my hand grazing the recorder in my jacket. My father's smile was brittle. No need to fight, Anna. Sign this, and it's done. The paper was a waiver of inheritance. I lifted the pen, feigning consideration. Elliot laughed. She doesn't need to carry Dad's mess anymore. You handled that old lawyer, didn't you, Dad? Silence thickened. My mother gasped. My father's eyes flared. Too late. The recorder caught it all. I set the pen down. I know he didn't just vanish, I said, walking out, leaving their panic behind. That night, Caleb called, voice low. Raymond offered me a bribe to stay quiet. I recorded it. He sent the file, my father's voice calm. We're protecting the family name. You'll get more if you forget. I sent it to federal prosecutors Sandra and Gwynn. I've waited 7 years for this, Anna, she said. Their turn now. A cold certainty settled in me. Justice wasn't a hope anymore, it was momentum. Rain trailed me back to Portland, lights blurring across the highway like fading memories. At the cemetery, the earth was soft under my shoes. My grandfather's headstone, weathered but clear, read, "Integrity forges legacy." I placed white orchids on the stone, whispering, "I'm not chasing wealth, I'm restoring truth." A note slipped from my pocket. "Legacy isn't handed down, it's forged." I realized it came from Gerald Pine, the lawyer who vanished, his final warning before they silenced him. My phone buzzed with a message from my mother. "Tomorrow, try to smile when they convict you." I replied, "You taught me silence, mother, but not how to wield it for deceit." At home, I gathered the evidence, will, photo, recordings, bribe video, into a leather case. Each page a weapon of truth. In the mirror, I saw one woman broken, another reborn. "They'll stop laughing tomorrow," I whispered. Rain tapped the window, a steady rhythm counting down to justice. The Multnomah courthouse glowed under harsh lights, cameras flashing as reporters shouted Crowell Estates like a scandal etched in stone. I entered in black, hair pulled tight, my heels cutting through the chaos. Inside, my mother sat rigid, her smile sharp as a blade. My father's jaw was set. Elliot lounged arrogantly. Their attorney smirked. "They'll bury you, Miss Crowell." I met his gaze. "I'm not here to bury anyone. I'm here for truth." The first video played, Elliot's voice from the lake house. "Dad handled that old lawyer, right?" The room tensed. My mother leapt up, yelling, "That's edited." The judge's gavel restored silence. Then the second file, my father's voice, "We're protecting the family name. You'll get more if you forget." The room stilled, camera lights catching my father's trembling hands. I placed a sealed envelope before the judge. My grandfather's letter was read aloud. "If she stands here, she's borne more than any man in this family." The judge's voice followed, firm. "This case isn't complex, it's criminal." The room roared. Their lawyer slumped. My parents paled, Elliot silent. I exhaled. They'd laughed when I entered. They weren't laughing now. The trial dragged into the afternoon, the courtroom thick with tension. Sunlight filtered through high windows, casting gold across the table where my papers lay. The air felt too still to breathe. Judge Mitchell's voice cut through, calm and final. "The court recognizes Anastasia Crowell's original will. Crowell Estates and all holdings are hers. The defendants, Raymond, Vivian, and Elliot Crowell, are referred to the federal prosecutor for forgery and obstruction." The room erupted, cameras flashing, reporters shouting. My mother's sob broke the air. My father stared down, shoulders collapsing. Elliot whispered, "You won, Anna, but we lost everything." I turned to him, voice low. "I didn't take anything. I returned what you ruined." The gavel's final strike felt like freedom. I gathered my files, the ones they tried to erase, the ones that outlasted their arrogance. Judge Mitchell stepped down, his face softening as he touched my shoulder. "Your grandfather would be proud." I met his gaze, steady. "He is." For a moment, the years collapsed. The first day in this courtroom, the judge's trembling hand now explained. He'd known my grandfather, known the man he was, and the storm I'd endured to stand here. The circle closed. Outside, reporters swarmed, shouting, "Miss Crowell, is this revenge?" I paused, meeting their eyes. "Justice doesn't roar," I said, turning away. The door shut behind me, muffling the chaos. The city's hum replaced it. Afternoon light streaming through glass like a thread of grace. It echoed the lake, the sun's shimmer on water, my grandfather's words, "Truth never sinks." Outside, the air was clean, the courthouse no longer a place of judgment, but of clarity. Camera flashes caught the gavel's silver handle inside, now a symbol of liberation. I didn't smile or raise my hands. I walked forward, the wind lifting my hair. The world grew quiet, and in that quiet, I found something lost for years, peace, not victory. Peace. At Crater Lake, dusk settled over the lake house where it all began. The air was crisp, the water a mirror reflecting a sky streaked with gold. I sat on the dock, its boards creaking, and pulled out my grandfather's letter. With a silver lighter, I set it alight, the flame dancing across my face as the paper curled and blackened. Ashes scattered over the lake, carried into silence. They laughed when I walked in, but I walked out free. A year later, I founded the Crowell Foundation for Integrity and Governance, dedicated to defending the wrongly accused in public service. Not for fame, but because justice without compassion is cruelty. The press dubbed it the quiet verdict, and I let them. It suited the truth that spoke softly. In one interview, the host asked, "Do you forgive them?" I smiled, not for the camera, but for myself. Forgiveness isn't releasing them. It's freeing me to live. Now, I teach at the Portland School of Law, in the city where my family once dominated the skyline. In my classroom, chalk dust coats my fingers as I write. Integrity forges legacy. Legacy isn't handed down, it's built. The students listen, unaware the words came from a man who believed in me when no one else did. Light streams through tall windows, illuminating the chalk, turning it silver. The same glow as that courtroom day, steady and true. I pause, hearing the wind weave through the trees, carrying the faint ripple of water against the dock. When class ends, I linger, watching sunlight drift across the floor, its reflection alive like a pulse. I close my eyes, and for the first time in years, the quiet feels full, peaceful, forgiven. The story ends by the lake, but now there's no fear, no bitterness, only calm. The wind hums, the water stirs, and the light dances across the surface, whispering the only verdict that matters. I'm free.